Good morning, welcome. We are very happy that all these very relevant speakers accepted the invitation. This is the only one satellite meeting of IFLA in Italy, and I am very proud of this, and we hope to have a follow-up of this satellite in Italy in particular. The topic is very important. In particular, is important in Italy, is the topic of convergence of libraries, museums, and archives beyond technology. And we will explain in this 1 day and a half what is this beyond technology. This conference has been organized in Italy by MAB and AIB, and the representative of this institution will speak later, together with Biblioteche Civiche di Torino and the Torino city and the university. Going to just introduce the organizer to you. First, IFLA Library Theory and Research Section. You know the organization of IFLA. IFLA has many sections. Library theory is specialized and particularly devoted to research and applied research, theoretical research in all aspects of discipline. This mission of the section is particularly important in this period of big change and transformation of libraries, archives, and museums. And this is one of the reasons of this satellite, which was promoted to focus on the convergence and identity of the free profession of the cultural heritage institutions. From this section of library theory, I am Anna Maria Tammaro, if you don't know me. I am the chair, and in the room we have also the secretary of the section, Cristina Matusiak. You can stand up, Cristina. And then the standing committee member, Heidi Olsen, and Simon Jules, I don't know if he's arriving, probably, another member of our section. Then we started to collaborate for this important topic or issue, as you want, of convergence with a professor of library science, because we will give evidence of this, but we think that education has an important role in transformation of the culture of the profession. And so we started to collaborate with EUCLID and ALISE. EUCLID is the European Association of Library Professors, and we have the chair here, Serap Kurbanoglu. Thank you for coming. And she has been collaborating in the organization of the conference. And Tatiana Parak, who is the past president, past chair of EUCLID, and we are very lucky she also is participating with us. From ALISE, I can introduce Patricia overall, Montiel overall, and unfortunately she'll be participating also Suzanne Lorraine Allard. She couldn't come because her flight was cancelled for the bad weather in US. But anyway, Patricia will take also the presentation which Suzanne we are going to do. And then coming to the most important organization group, which is the local organizer. I am really in debt to the local organizer, and I wish to thank them very much of all the effort they have done for the very good organization of the satellite. In particular, the local organizer mainly were AIB, Piemonte, and AIB National. And from AIB Piemonte, I can introduce to you Enzo Borio, who is the president, the chair of the section, is in the room, but he will come later. And Diomira Fortunato, who is the treasurer, very important role to build the treasurer in this organization. And from the National Association of Libraries, we have the chair, Enrica Manenti, who will give a little introduction later. Then from ANAI, we have had a very good collaboration from the chair of the Italian Archive Association, Marco Carassi. Marco yesterday have done the guide for the visit of archive, and his guide was very much appreciated. I wish to thank him for all the effort, but in particular for this tour she has planned for us in the National Archive. And then MAB, the speaker will say more to you about MAB. MAB is a very interesting initiative taken in Italy by the association to start collaborate. In particular on MAB, I nominate Diego Robotti, Susanna Maglietta, and Patrizia Petitti, who have collaborated in the organization with us. The host organization committee was very broad, and I cannot nominate everybody, but I want just to thank in particular Enrico Pasini of University of Torino, the professor, and Maurizio Vivarelli, the professor of University of Torino, in particular professor of library science, Giovanni Saccani of the Royal Library, and Riccardo Pasoni, who is the director of this site, the director of GAM. And I wanted to thank in particular the city of Turin, two offices were collaborating with us, the International Relations and the Tourism Office. I wanted to nominate Fortunata Amocida, Marina Giovacchini, Anna Maria Bertolotto, Giovanni Bianco, and Rina Amato, Eugenia Piccoli, who were very collaborative with us for the best organization of this satellite. And from public libraries then. Public libraries was the backbone, the core of this organization. And I have had a fantastic experience of collaborating with this really smart colleague. I was very lucky, and I want to thank in particular this group. Paolo Messina is the director, and I will say some welcome to you. Valeria Calabrese, who has done all the virtual site organization. Cecilia Cognini, she is here. Stand up, Cecilia, because you are really the main person in this room, the most important one. And Anna Garbero. Thank you to all of you. Also, we have had a sponsor, only one, but very important for us, is a company for furniture for libraries, and in the back of the room you find some of the products they sell. Promal, and the architect Pesso is the owner of this company. Now it's time the welcome address. I hope not to have forgive nobody in the list of persons I am in debt I want to thank. But the welcome address is started by Enrica Manenti, who is the chair of Italian Library Association. Enrica, to you the floor.
Thank you. It's an honor for me to be here in Turin as president of AIB. This is the Association of Italian Libraries, this being my first opportunity at international level. I would like to thank all the institutions involved in this interesting art satellite meeting. As Anna Maria told before, and they were very important in supporting this interesting this project. And I would like also to thank all the speakers. I also wish to thank all my colleagues involved in organization, first and foremost my friend Anna Maria Tamaro and Cecilia Cognini. I expect a lot from this satellite meeting, and I must say that as soon as Anna Maria Tamaro mentioned it to me and disseminated the first materials, I immediately had the impression that it would be especially interesting. An impression made even stronger when I got around to reading the program. So much so that I had in any case decided to take part even before receiving the kind invitation from the organizer. Along with Anai and Nicom, I told it in Italian because it's more easy for me, and gathered together in the MAB, have decided to realize their annual congress together this year, as they had already done in Milan in 2012. The theme being dealt with, the location will be Rome, Biblioteca Nazionale Centrale, 20-21 of November 2014. The theme is the professions of the cultural heritage between recognition and training. And so I think it's easy to see that this ideally continue a path, and in any case, this is my hope, also traced out by this satellite meeting. The short time available and the importance of starting the scientific works right away curtail my wish to speak of a variety of matters, perhaps of common interest. Anyway, maybe more ahead, I will try to make a contribution to our discussion. However, I cannot fail to mention that in Turin is the only one satellite meeting for IFLA 2014, as Anna Maria told before. Having collaborated in the realization of a satellite for IFLA 2009 in Bologna, 18-20 of August 2009, and the title was Moving In, Moving Up and Moving On, Strategies for Regenerating the Library and Information Profession, I know how hard it is, and I think that unfortunately the condition of the Italian libraries 5 years on have worsened, making it even harder to implement these projects. We must, however, be careful not to lose ground. The international benchmark is increasingly necessary, and technology can help us in this too. I would like to thank everyone wholeheartedly, and I wish them a fruitful experience here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Enrica. Now I ask to Marco Carassi to give his welcome.
Thank you. Procuste, a Greek bandit, used to stop travelers on the way from Megara to Athens and forced them to lie down on a bed. However, he offered a long bed to short people and stretched them until they reached the whole length of the bed, while he made tall people lie on short bed, and then he would cut off the protruding part of their legs. Clearly, we wouldn't like to treat libraries, archives, and museum holdings the way Procuste treated the unfortunate travelers. We are not as unrespectful of our holdings and users as Procuste was of travelers. And as cultural heritage professionals, we have an obligation to collaborate in providing every kind of traveler to our separate domain with the best possible experience. We are engaged in developing ambitious strategies to ensure correct preservation, adequate accessibility, and best use of our materials for which we are responsible. There are many activities that can profit from an alliance among library, archives, and museum professionals by enabling us to better safeguard and control the objects of our care. Digitization and digital preservation are an issue for us all. However, in order to work together in an effective way, we must pay attention to the conceptual and methodological differences among our disciplines, which are due to the nature of the material that is the object of our respective care. Archives, for instance, particularly those that are born digital, have to be controlled since the very beginning of their life, when they are made, received, and kept as records and instruments for action and evidence of it. Their administrative and legal functions remains evident in their content, form, as well as in the interrelationship of the records that build the archival fonds and its structure, even after the passage of time has given them a predominant cultural value. This means that arrangement, description, and access of an archival fonds cannot be carried out in the same way as they are for a library or a museum collection. At the same time, we must not work locked in separate ivory towers. There is a very thin line that we must walk to avoid opposite dangers. One danger is to reject collaboration, seeing each other as separate worlds. Another danger is to favor an integration that would deprofessionalize us, merging our disciplines into one. We have to meet the challenges brought about by the digital environment through programs of education and training that, while preserving our disciplinary identity based on the distinctiveness of theories and methods, support and foster the creation of productive partnerships where professionals of each discipline contribute their unique knowledge to achieve common goals. I share Erika's thanks for everybody, particularly for Anna Maria Tamaro, Cecilia Cognini, and all the colleagues participating in this difficult and complex organization. I regret Daniele Jallat, ICOM president, cannot be with us, but I know he sympathizes with our enterprise and is actively involved in collaboration among archives, libraries, and museums of the Valdensians Church in Torre Pellice, where 3 or 4 years ago, the foundation meeting was held of MAB Italy, Museum, Archives and Library Professional Association Coordinating Committee. And of course, we would avoid to be treated as Procuste. In fact, having annoyed travelers too much, he was at last killed by Theseus.
Thank you very much, Marco. Also, having introduced the theme, the point we are going to discuss in this meeting. Now, Enzo Borio, who is the chair of the Italian Association of Libraries in Piedmont, will give some welcome to you.
Good morning and welcome to all the participants in our satellite meeting of the IFLA World Library and Information Congress. Welcome also at the name of the new Executive Committee of the Piemonte Regional Association of Italian Libraries. Our regional group has collaborated to organize this meeting. Much of the work was also conducted by the outgoing committee and in particular by the previous chair, Cecilia Cognini. I want to thank her for the commitment and passion demonstrated. We are particularly grateful to IFLA, IB, MAB Piedmont and the city of Turin for organize and support this meeting. This is an important opportunity to reinforce the collaboration between ICOM and IB in Italy and in this region. In fact, MAB Italy, a coordination between these three associations, was born here in Turin. I will not take further time, so I end by thanking all those who have worked for the success of this meeting, and in particular, my colleagues of the Regional Executive Committee, and wish everyone good work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Enzo. And now I give the floor to Enrico Pasini, the professor of philosophy of the University of Torino, who is involved in libraries anyway.
In a way or the other, but as far as ivory towers are concerned, I'm an expert. Yes, I'm the delegate of the rector of the University of Turin for the library system of the university. So I did nothing to organize this meeting, but I'm very thankful to the organizer for giving me the opportunity to bring you a very warm welcome from the university, a welcome from our library system and the whole university to all the participants of the satellite meeting of the IFLA Congress in Lyon. The University of Turin is the major university in this town, a town that has made recently the move from an industrial one-company town to a town engaged on many fronts, some of them being cultural, contemporary arts, food culture, and as has been mentioned by some of those that have preceded me in these greetings, librarian, museum conservators, and so on, let's say, cultural heritage, professional culture. We are, as I said, the main university in this town and in this region, not the smallest library system. And we are one of the few universities that have an independent museal system of its own. So we are enormously interested in the theme of this satellite congress. We are interested not exactly in teaching, but in learning how to develop our own system, our own opportunities, to be on the verge of innovation on this theme, which is so central for any system, even an unimportant one, as the one that I represent here. So let me conclude with short greetings, as short as greetings are the welcomes, by wishing all of us 2 days of fruitful discussion and works. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I would like to remind that Maurizio Vivarelli has been collaborating with the organizing committee from the University of Torino and is a professor of library science. Then I give the floor to the next speaker of the host organization, is Eugenio Pintore of the region Piemonte.
Buongiorno, io parlerò italiano perché il mio inglese è pessimo. Magari Anna Maria mi sintetizza poi.
Eugenio is speaking in Italian.
Okay. E intanto benvenuto a tutti, vi porto i saluti della Regione Piemonte, dell'assessore che non è potuto essere presente. E ringrazio ovviamente l'IFLA e l'AIBE per aver organizzato questo incontro così importante nella nostra regione.
Welcome and particular greetings from the assessor of the region who couldn't come, and he is very grateful to IFLA and AIB to have organized this important meeting here.
Il tempo che stiamo vivendo è un tempo di grandi trasformazioni e questa novità portata dall'intersezione tra professioni, tra bibliotecari, archivisti, musei, e costituisce per noi una prospettiva molto interessante, perché ci aiuta a far fronte a situazioni che non siamo più in grado di gestire come abbiamo sempre fatto.
We live in a period of big transformation of cultural heritage profession, and this push to the convergence is important for not only profession but also politicians, because stimulate to reflect how to transform a chain, an organization we are not able anymore to maintain.
È una necessità che ha ragioni, come tutti sapete, legate alla congiuntura economica, che non permette di avere le risorse che abbiamo avuto negli ultimi 30 anni, ma è una necessità che deriva anche da un cambiamento negli istituti, nella realtà documentaria, nelle caratteristiche, no? Degli archivi, dei musei e anche delle biblioteche.
One constraint is well known, is the economic crisis. But this is not the only one. The other constraint is the big transformation in the organization of public cultural heritage organization.
E c'è una ulteriore motivazione che ha a che fare invece con la possibilità per i professionisti, no, di trovare una seria e concreta opportunità di lavoro.
And this also offers new possibilities of job for professionals, once the old traditional professionals are missing or losing their job.
La formazione professionale a cui ci chiama quella riflessione che stiamo facendo è la formazione di una figura assolutamente diversa da quella con cui sono stati formati quelli della mia generazione.
Education should be changed, and the new education, the education of this new professional should be different from the education we have had in the past.
La nuova figura che noi immaginiamo è una figura che è insieme a competenze archivistiche, a competenze museali, a competenze biblioteconomiche.
We have the vision of a new professional with a background combining archives, libraries, museum competencies.
E che la sua storia professionale poi porterà a una specializzazione particolare.
And then he can specialize it depending on the job he got. But the education, the background should be common.
Quindi questo per dirvi che è una sfida di cui non abbiamo ancora definito tutti gli strumenti e i contorni, ma è una sfida che ci sentiamo di raccogliere e credo che sia una necessità per tutti raccogliere. Di nuovo i saluti, ringraziamento a tutti e buon lavoro.
And so it's a challenge, you know, it's a challenge, but we have realized that we have to afford this and try a solution. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Angela. Okay, now the last speaker is Paolo Messina. Please forgive me. Maurizio Messina is another person in Venice. This was a mistake of mine. And so Paolo Messina.
First of all, you are welcome in Turin. Not in the best weather you may find in Turin in this season, but I'm sure that in this room, weather is going to become warmer and warmer for the future speech we are going to listen to. I read you a message that the mayor of the city of Turin and the deputy mayor for cultural affairs and cultural heritage asked for me to read for you. We are glad to welcome you in Turin, which hosts again an IFLA Satellite meeting after the very interesting and positive experience in 2009. This choice was dictated not only by the proximity of Lyon, where the 80th IFLA Congress and General Assembly is going to be held, but also because of the strong cultural vocation of our city and the significant synergy between museums, archives, and libraries, which follows the principles of the educational and cultural policy of this administration. Turin has a historical, artistic, and archaeological heritage of great value. Roman ruins, the extraordinary residences of the House of Savoy, stately homes, museums, and art galleries, all concur in making it one of the most attractive cities of art in Italy. It retains in its physical stratigraphy and architectural memory the traces of a history often coinciding with that of the country it contributed so actively to create, our country, Italy. Turin is a lively city that, after the initial shock of the crisis of the industrial model for autocars, was able to take new roads, looking for resources also in its impressive heritage of culture, tradition, capacity, and excellence, with the purpose of unfolding in front of the world with a strong historical, human, cultural peculiarity. And this constitutes its peculiarity and wealth. Over the past 20 years, Turin has become a true plural city, a city of international services and universities, of knowledge and innovation. It has become once again a great capital for culture, offering museums, exhibitions, film and music festivals, theater performances, juvenile creativity centers, and cultural systems. Almost without equal in Italy at the moment, very appreciated by the ever-increasing flow of tourists as well. We strongly believe culture is one of the core values for development of an area. It makes it more attractive, creates employment and well-being. But we think culture is the engine we must continue to fuel with investments in order to promote and achieve a higher quality of life for our citizens, and also a strategic key to overcome the crisis, the economic crisis. Networking is therefore essential to promote effective synergies between organizations and institutions able to stimulate and increase not only the number and the variety of cultural offerings, but above all, their quality. To all of you, actively involved in this very challenging experience of cooperation, of thinking, I had, of thinking about the cooperation, the city of Turin wish good luck with your work and enjoy your stay in Turin. This is from the mayor and the deputy mayor of city of Turin for you. And I only add some few words as public library system network in Turin director. I think it's very important. This will not be the most crowded pre-conference of this Lyon Congress, but I'm sure this is very important. We lived in this year the experience to have technology as engine also for our professional improvement. In Italy, especially, for librarians, automation was the horse of Troy to improve, to transform, especially for university librarians in the past, to transform clerks in librarians, really, specialized, professional people. But it isn't a very good thing, because the risk is to lose the roots, to lose what has to move ourselves. Technology has to be the instrument to improve our service for our users. So, to have the opportunity to reflect in a theoretical way is very, very important, especially nowadays, where technology seems to become, sorry, the new divinity. Well, the new Moloch we have to obey. So I wish, and for all of us, a very good opportunity to be able to use this opportunity, really to think, to pose ourselves to another level, a level who is important not to lose for our future. We know every kind of people in public libraries, especially, more than in museums or archives, perhaps. So we know that users are our focal point, also in our reflections, how to organize our services, how to transform our professional roles. So not only enjoy Turin, but also enjoy what we are going to hear.
Thank you very much to all the speakers. First of all, to have been so short and in time with the planned session, but also because you have introduced already the theme of the conference, highlighting what we will discuss, the challenge, the issue, but the opportunity also. And I like in particular Paolo Messina stressing the need of theory, because now we really feel we lack this theoretical framework common to all of us. And so, just to introduce the team, adding something more, in 2008, IFLA started to discuss about the convergence, and the next keynote speaker will say sure more, but I would like start from the definition. In that meeting, we spoke of digital convergence, because when we are speaking of convergence, we are speaking of digital convergence. And in the definition, the focus was the user. We adopt the digital convergence because we want to enrich the user experience by enabling seamless access to all type of information. And so this is our aim. But as already has been evidenced by the speaker, and we all know, it's very difficult to achieve this aim and objective. And in UNESCO in 2012 has done a conference in Paris where they listed internationally the obstacles to convergence of the profession. And you see, first of all, is lack of cooperation. Lack of cooperation not only between archive, library, museum, but also with the computer scientists, and also with legal scientists. And this is a weakness of our profession. Also, we continue to have a culture of isolation, and also when we do strategy or we plan a mission, we do at institutional level, inside the border of the institution. And we have also competing interests. There is competition between creators and preservers. There is competition between access promoter and preservation philosophies. And anyway, it was recognized that we need another evolving skill set, bringing another cultural sensitivity. And I think that this report, the proceedings of this UNESCO conference can be a good starting point for the discussion we are going to do. The themes of the satellite are three. We, in the section library theory, we recognized that we don't have theoretical foundations. And so this is really focused on the mission of the section, and we have the ambition to try to develop, also continuing the research, probably with a project, to find what theoretical foundation underlying and so common to separated but related discipline we can develop together. Then education. Education is very important because we have recognized that most of the divergent approach start from education, and education is important also for new skills we need. And the third is data curation and big data. Because while we are discussing, since the last 10 years, the situation is evolving. New jobs are now started. Data curation is mandatory for a new project, for example, in Europe. And we have to afford this new scenario, which is new. Is new, but we would like that the best of our traditional profession can enforce this new, and not the new starting from the beginning without any links, connection with the past. This is a challenge, absolutely. The program, just to remember you, is divided in 3 sessions. The 3 sessions are today, one in the morning, the other 2 in the afternoon. We have given a space to poster session, which are already put on the grid. And poster session will have a very short presentation tomorrow morning. And we will finish with the round table, which we hope can give some news and some new advancement to the debate. The organization has been very well prepared by Turin colleague, and we will be here. The lunch also is offered and will be here. And today there is the plan to have a visit of this gallery, which is very beautiful. I recommend you, if you have time, during the lunch time to use this opportunity. And then we start with the serious part, the concrete part of this satellite. And we have the first keynote. I am very grateful to her to have accepted the invitation. Especially, I would like to evidence that accepting the invitation was for Lynn Rudasil a big effort. Unfortunately, her flight was in delay. She arrived very late, and she has not seen anything of Torino. She arrived late in the night, and then this morning she came here. And also, she has to leave before, because she is the chair of professional committee, which is a very important role in IFLA, and she has to come back for a meeting, unfortunately. And so Lynn Rudasil, just to say very short presentation, is a professor in Urbana-Champaign at the University of Illinois, is a professor of library administration, and she will explain to you all the activities and debate conferences organized by IFLA for affording this challenge of convergence. Lynn, to you the floor. Thank you very much. Thank you.
We'll see how many times I drop my laptop on the floor as I'm doing this. I've only done it once today so far. Hello, and thank you. Buongiorno. I would love to give my talk in Italian, but you would not understand me. I have to find out how to get out of here. Fine presentation. That looks like the one. Yeah. There we go. Just a second, and we'll get her pulled up here. Yeah, I did have an adventure as usual getting here yesterday, but it was well worth the trip, and I'm sure that I'll get to see something of Turin before I have to go home, or have to go on to Lyon. Any second now I'll have this. I've almost got it. Almost got it. Oh, I can get it. Oh. Yay. Okay, I should put my glasses on. I can't see. From the beginning. Ha! See? There it is. Okay, the topic that Anna Maria suggested I talk about was exploring the changing landscape, IFLA and the convergence of libraries, archives, and museums. And I thought I would take her up on that. Of course, standing up here now, I realize that our previous speakers mentioned everything I'm going to say here, so I could just sit down, but I'll hang around because I made these pretty slides. So, first of all, let's talk about landscape. We're going to be exploring a landscape. This is not an exciting landscape, but it is a landscape. And the interesting thing about when looking at landscapes is that generally there's a foreground, a middle ground, and a distance. And that's a little bit of what I'm going to talk about today. I'm talking from the foreground of IFLA and its work in convergence between libraries, archives, museums, monuments, and audiovisual material, because all of those areas are now part of one. They're all part of curation. They're all part of what has been referred to as cultural memory. So we have to keep those in mind at all times. So as I say, it sort of depends on your point of view. When I look at this, I see beautiful Lubeck, Maine. I've just had a lobster roll. There are geese in the background. The ocean's on the other side of that most distant part of the landscape. So we'll start with that landscape and see where it goes. One of the things that is particularly important to IFLA and is part of our ongoing strategic plan would be the key initiatives. Okay, the key initiatives make up what IFLA works towards on a regular basis. There are several of them. Number one is digital content program. I've pulled these out because they are most specifically related to what we do in working towards a concept of convergence. And they also help to describe why we are so interested in IFLA in convergence. So first of all, we have KI1, Digital Content Program, driving access to content, digital resources for informed library users and communities. This pretty much, I think, explains what we have been doing, not just in IFLA, but in the field of convergence. Digital tools have allowed us to do so much more than we ever could do before. We really have come together in the cybersphere to be able to push information out to our users, to let our users know that there are archives that exist elsewhere, to let people engage in and look at what our museums hold, thereby drawing them in to see the original objects that have been digitized on many, many, many levels. So we have the Digital Content Program, KI2, International Library Leadership Development Program. That includes capacity building to raise the voice of the profession nationally, regionally, and internationally. KI2 is particularly related, I think, to what our profession does. I'm talking about librarians here. Our library profession does to train and engage our students and individuals generally in, what can we really learn? What can we really teach others about how information is shared, the importance of professional leadership in this area? Nancy Gwynn works, you do work with the IFLA Leadership Program for young leaders. It's very important to IFLA to see our profession promoted and people engaged with us on many levels, not just individually. Okay, KI3, Outreach for Advocacy and Advancement of the Library and Information Sector, connecting, collaborating, and representing strategically. A lot of what we do here also relates to policy making. IFLA really does try to have a large influence in the policies, including copyright policies that are promulgated far and wide. We also, KI4 probably would strike a chord with you as being the most related to our cultural memory, and that is the Cultural Heritage Disaster and Reconstruction Program. And we maintain culture as a basic need, and a community thrives through its cultural heritage. It dies without it. That's incredibly important to us. But going back, let's look at Key Initiative 1 more closely and see how it might relate. There's copyright reform in a multi-stakeholder and multilateral setting. We work constantly with ICOM, with ICA, with many others, working with WIPO and working through UNESCO and others to try and get the rules changed, the laws changed, trying to get a very simple thing. We want exceptions to copyright for libraries. We have to continue to plug at this, and the fact that some of our work between museums, archives, and libraries is converging is very helpful, because there are many voices coming forward and saying, we have to do something about copyright. Capacity building program providing advocacy tools for libraries to engage in digital content developments at the national level. One of the other things that IFLA is currently engaged in is trying to push the UN and UNESCO in certain directions. The Millennium Development Goals, which I hope you've all heard of, are due in 2015. And currently we're discussing ways to make sure that information gets on the agenda for the next set of imperatives and initiatives from the UN and UNESCO. And one of those things we really recognize is it's not enough to say that developing nations and others should have access to the internet. They should have, they must have. And that is one of the things that we're really trying to get on the agenda and push for, saying, no, it's not something, no, we admit it's not food and water. But at the next level, it's information that tells you about how to purify your water and how to sell your food products. So it's very important to us, to capacity building. Internet governance, I don't even know if I want to talk about this. This is so depressing to me. Talking about net neutrality, talking about privacy issues, talking about so many other things. Internet governance is what, in many ways, we are all about, whether we are in libraries, archives, or museums. It affects all of us. Open access is another big issue for us, and that is beautifully exemplified in things like the World Digital Library, like the Library of Congress memory collection, like the Smithsonian collections. There's so Europeana. There are so many wonderful things that are available to us through open access. We need to continue to emphasize this to our policymakers. Another item you see here under Key Initiative 1 is the IFLA Trend Report, and I'll mention that in a little bit more detail later in the talk. We're also talking about e-lending and standards driving excellence. The standards are something that's just on the horizon of this particular landscape, because we've just recently really formalized the development and dissemination of standards through the IFLA organization. And hopefully, at some point in time, there'll be some convergence of standards with libraries, museums, and archives, and AV materials as well. Okay, Key Initiative 4, the one that one would think immediately would most relate to what we're talking about here in these 2 days. That is Cultural Heritage and Disaster Reconstruction Program. As you can see here in 13 to 15, the priority is given to working with strategic partners to develop a risk register for documentary heritage in areas at risk from natural disasters or conflict, with the broader aim of being compatible with the Blue Shield and UNESCO activities in this area. We see every day in the news monuments being destroyed. We see places being ravaged by floods and by fire. And with that goes much of our cultural heritage. It might not be my cultural heritage, but it's somebody else's. And this is disappearing rapidly. The Blue Shield sometimes is a very effective organization to deal with threats to cultural heritage. But at the same time, I think sometimes it just is like a little flashing target. This is where you can go to cause the most damage to a culture first. So this is something that we are working on, and I know there are several presentations at WILIC in Lyon about risk management, about how to handle catastrophes, fires, floods, and the threat of civil conflict. But let's sort of look beyond the initiatives a little bit, and we can see that there are several things that have been going on in the past and will continue. We have a long history, I think, relatively long, not as long as some of the cities in Europe, but a relatively long history in IFLA of looking at and working with conservation matters. We have, since the 80s, had the Preservation and Conservation Strategic Program. Has worked along these lines. The Vancouver Declaration was a declaration that really emphasized the concept of open access to culture. And then there was the Statement of Principles on Global Cross-Sectoral Digitization Initiatives, another very important statement. And then there's the development and the cooperation of LAMs. I actually saw, I don't know if you'll get this alliteration or not, but I saw that there was a conference referred to as Silence of the Lambs, and I found that rather frightening. But I thought that's a wonderful title. But libraries, archives, museums, monuments, and sites, and LAMS does quite a bit to promote and underline the access to cultural and memory information. It's made up of 5 international organizations for cultural heritage. There's IFLA, there's ICA, ICOM, ICOMOS, and I think that's CCAAA. They all work as international organizations, and they are all registered international or non-governmental organizations, which does give them some voice in what UNESCO does. It gives them an opportunity at least to speak at various meetings that are held. So it's wonderful to have 5 organizations well aligned. The focus of LAMS are copyright and other legal matters, very important to us all. Political lobbying, you can't just stand in your own little corner and jump up and down. Sometimes you have to join together and go after the politicians or the policy makers and say, really, we really have to have this, and this is why. They also work on preservation and protection of cultural heritage and work to support global digital libraries. I have to say, global digital libraries are my favorite things. At lunchtime, I frequently go to the World Digital Library or Europeana and just sort of look around, and because despite this presentation, I am a very visual person and I enjoy lots of pictures. And then there's the standardization. And I think we need to talk a lot about the concept of standardization, because standardization and convergence are a couple of things, but there is a further thing called interdisciplinarity, and that's something that I'll talk about in a few minutes. So we see our landscape sort of filling in. I mean, this is not as empty as the other one was. There's something growing. There are more levels to it. There's more to look at. And it's getting close to harvest time, at least where I live. Okay, so there are a lot of challenges to convergence, and these have been mentioned before. We have different orientations, we have differing functions, we have differing resources, and we have differing philosophies that ground what we do as librarians, archivists, and curators. Just to dwell on this a bit, I will give you my personal opinion, my personal conceptualization of the differences. To me, librarians are about ordering things and then disseminating things. We're very interested in our users. We're very interested in making it as simple as possible for all of our users to get the information that they want or think they need. Okay? That's very simple. Archives is a great repository of information that does not organize itself in the same way as a library. An archive, I believe, is organized so that people can go in and they can follow a trail. They can follow the development of an idea. They can have it in front of them and they can move along through the documents, through the archives, through the funds that allow an individual to trace and interpret the materials as part of the historical record. So that sets it a little bit apart from the purpose of a library immediately. But at the same time, archivists want people to be able to use what they have. They want people to learn from that. They are like librarians in the idea that, at least at the professional level, they're not supposed to interpret what they have, but I think they do have a certain role in interpretation because they indeed tend to choose what goes into the archive, and they tend to influence what is available through the archive. And they certainly tend to help the user of the archive probably a little bit more than a librarian does in accessing their material. And finally, I would just talk briefly about museums. The curator is all about interpretation. The curator wants somebody to come in. They want to show a particular object. They want the public as much as the other two groups do, but they interpret. They interpret the materials in displaying what they display, in not displaying what they don't display. And I do have to say that I drive my family nuts when I go to a museum, especially an art gallery, because I will read every single plaque next to every single object. And it really destroyed me. There's a place called the Musée Quai de Le Branly. I butchered that totally, but it's in Paris, and they have a beautiful, incredible display of, and their emphasis is on indigenous art. And they have this fantastic room, and everything's hanging there, and it's all in 3D, and you can walk around it, but there are no signs on it. And it drives me nuts. Of course not, because there are computer stations where you can go and read about the specific object and, in fact, find its relationship to the other objects in the room, which is a new way of me approaching a museum. And I find it both very interesting, and it takes me even longer to get through the museum that way. But so we have three very different viewpoints that we come from, very different philosophies. In a way, however, everything we do relates to cultural heritage and relates to users, relates to the greater public, whether they be people from the community, from historical institutions, or from universities and classrooms. There are some things that are very imperative for us when we talk about convergence. Diminishing resources, we've heard about this already. There was an economic crisis. There was a universal economic crisis in the last several years. However, even had we not had the economic crisis, I cannot say to you or argue to you that we would be better off today. I think that the diminishing resources are going to diminish for libraries and museums and archives, primarily because we aren't good enough at marketing ourselves. We aren't good enough at lobbying with the political and social resource holders that we need to argue with. So I think even without the fiscal crisis, I think we do suffer from diminishing resources. And the most interesting thing about diminishing resources is this. If you have a large pot of money and you have several people interested in that pot of money, they will be very happy with what they get. If you have a small pot of money and you have 3 groups interested in getting that, the competition for that small pot of money is always much more heated, much more targeted, and there's a lot more competition for a smaller pot of money, I maintain, than a large pot of money. I've noticed this in institutions over the years, and I'm convinced that's the way it goes. So we do have the diminishing resources. Happily, we have digital trends. We know this. And probably this is where IFLA and others are most interested in seeing the convergence. Actually, the digital trends make it easier to converge our collections, to converge our work. And then we have the continuing question of memory institutions. And I know there's been in the past some dispute about just what is a memory institution, an argument about, well, are we really all 3 memory institutions? I would say, yes, we are. I mean, who else is going to capture the culture? Who else is going to capture the knowledge? And in the near future, who else is going to capture the data? Who's going to capture the big data that is being produced if the 3 of us don't, or the 5 of us actually, don't sit down and figure out how to do it together? So the trend report is something I did want to mention because it sort of moves along these lines. There are 3 particular parts of it that I think are pertinent to what we're talking about. New technologies will both expand and limit who has access to information. We will hope that it expands it. We really hope it expands access to information. But at the same time, we have to work to ensure that it is possible for those new technologies to be enjoyed by all. The cell phone, the ubiquitous cell phone. I think it's absolutely the best invention in the world because you can take it almost anywhere and you can access wonderful and exciting and useful materials. Everything from 3-minute videos on how to prevent malaria to digital collections that are just outstanding and amazing, to the map that will tell me how to get around Turin a little later. So new technologies expand and limit who has access to information. Online education will democratize and disrupt traditional learning. And I think we've seen this in many ways already. I come from a school that has had for, 10 or 15 years, an online master's degree program in library and information science. We require students to come to our campus for 1 weekend each semester, but other than that, they do everything online. Some people love to learn like that, other people cannot stand to learn like that, so we continue to have the same traditional program on our campus. The difference is that frequently, people on campus will enroll in the online courses because they have to work at a certain time, and it's easier to take the online course. I don't think this is unusual. I think this is becoming more ubiquitous. We have to learn how to push the information out. Then we have things like the MOOCs. We have Coursera. We have the MIT access to all of their courses. We have the Khan Academy, which I continue to tell myself I will go back and learn how to do math again through. There are so many resources that people have now. How is that going to challenge our formal education programs? We really have to think about this. And I think in large part, libraries, archives, and museums will truly be affected by this, not only by the demand for our resources, but also asking us to reconceptualize what we are doing and how we are pushing our information forward. And then hyper-connected societies will listen to and empower new voices and groups. And I think this relates a little bit, in some ways, to the concept of indigenous knowledge. Who actually owns the knowledge? Who owns indigenous knowledge? We had a conference, I think it was in 2012, we had a session at the Willick, and we talked, Lorraine Roy, special interest group, talked about indigenous knowledge. And it's fascinating because many of us are so engaged in pushing our knowledge out and sharing it with everybody, and there are some other people saying, well, wait just a second. I will let you have my knowledge, but you cannot interpret it. Only I can interpret it. So it is a very interesting concept to me, and I think that more and more groups will show up and say, hey, just a second, you can have this data, but I feel like I should be the one interpreting it. Okay? The last thing I really want to talk about is interdisciplinarity. And I think this is another word for convergence. This is another word for collaboration. But I think from where I stand in my, or sit actually, in my office in global studies, interdisciplinarity is the one thing I think will affect us most in all areas. And we have to think about it. It's inter as contested space. We're talking about disciplines that have overlapping and contested spaces between them. How are we going to handle that? There's inter as the action taken on insights. Okay, we're getting great ideas, we're developing great new methodologies, but how are we going to share those and work on those particular insights together? And then inter as the result of integration. And there's always this back and forth with convergence about what do we have to lose? What do we have to lose? And what do we have to gain by converging some of our learning, some of our philosophy, and some of our methodology? What do we have to lose by trying it? And when I talk about interdisciplinarity, I really don't want to talk about we are going to take X and make it become Y. we're going to take all three of our areas, we're going to take all three of our disciplines, and we will probably eventually create a new interdisciplinary area of study. It won't happen immediately, and it won't mean that library training will disappear, that archival training will disappear, or that the concept of curating a museum will actually disappear. The same skills that the three groups have will always be required for those three groups. But there will be another level that we can take it to, and that's the interdisciplinary level, where working probably in the digital realm, although I've seen more and more evidence of physical convergence recently in various areas. But especially in the digital realm, as we do training for our students, as we teach them, as we provide them some kind of philosophy from which to work, we probably will develop into this interdisciplinary convergence of how do we deal with information, how do we access information, how do we make it available to the user who wants it when they want it. Totally challenging traditional norms. There'll be integration in library and iSchools. There's going to be continuing pressure to improve public policy. And again, understanding what it is, we have to decide what are we going to lose? What will I lose as a librarian if I work in a more integrated way with an archivist? Well, in my institution, we already have the University Archives as part of the library, and we're now working on new space for them because we've been encountering a lot more use of the archives recently in undergraduate education. So we're very excited about that. But what do I have to lose? So here is a fuller landscape. I do believe this is from Florence. There are more details. And you can see it sort of converges on that center that leads up to what I hope will be a very fruitful and beneficial collaboration between libraries, archives, museums, monuments, and audiovisual materials, which truly are born in the digital age. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lynn. And there is time now for question. I imagine you have.
What if I have a question for you?
Thank you. Hi, I'm a musical librarian. I would like your opinion about what about the profession who are rooted on a single domain, like music is.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's very interesting. I'm actually a subject specialist at my library. I'm the subject specialist for political science. And I also do global studies and EU studies and international documents. But that's a little different. You know, there is no reason why in the field of music it should not continue to converge with other things. I mean, you have a very important role as a music librarian to be sure that the music that your students need and use is appropriately conserved, right? And it has to be curated, and it's very important to scholars of music to be able to look at the archival sort of path of the various composers and how they changed over time. So I think it's entirely within the realm of music librarianship. And I think the most important thing for the music librarian is to work with the audiovisual archives to make sure that things are properly collected, properly digitized, and conserved. I think the conservation of the kind of media, the modern media that you have, is incredibly important. So we have as part of my library, we have the John Philip Sousa archive. So it's a great deal of fun. We go over there a lot too. We have programs. We interact with each other all the time so that when we do have people coming to the general reference desk and asking about music, we can say, well, we have this music library, but you might also want to go over to the archives and see what they have there. Because there are some things that can't be digitized over there. There are instruments. I did see, however, not long ago, I was in my digital processing unit upstairs at the main library, and they were actually doing the 3D digitization of some, I'm probably not using the right term, antique instruments, some older instruments that were no longer made, and they were doing 3D representations of them. So, and maybe, you know, if they do a good enough representation, maybe we can take it later to the 3D printer and get it all printed out, and we can all have these, I don't know. Does that help at all?
There is a question here.
Thank you very much, Lynn, for your...
There is the microphone coming.
Thank you. Tatiana Paratsielosic, University of Zadar. Thank you very much, Lynn, for your interesting and very inspiring presentation. In your talk, you mentioned imperatives for convergence, and the third line was the question of memory institutions. What do you have in mind, in particular, when talking about heritage institutions? Do you mean they are going to be forced to join in, or something else?
No, I think we're still, from what I have read about this, we're still having debates over what is a heritage institution, what is a memory institution. Are we automatically considered to be memory institutions if we're a library or an archive? Is this just a natural progression when we talk about these things? And I am not really sure about that, because there is this sort of dichotomy between what I conceive of as a memory institution, and it tends to be a little bit more traditional in nature. When I think about data, when I think about digitization, I have a harder time connecting that with a memory institution that preserves cultural heritage in the same way. Because it's hard to explain. So I think about big data. We're going to have to conserve and preserve big data, and that's a total imperative. That's not just in the EU, that's in the US too now. We have to curate our data sets. Is that part of our cultural heritage? Is that part of a memory institution's job? Is that what we're supposed to be doing? So I just see the two sort of standing out there, and I don't want to be pejoratively classed, quote, as a memory institution. Because we're not just about memories, we're about much, much more. And it's a much larger issue. I think it's just the way that we're probably all changing.
Set up.
Well, thank you very much, Lynn, for this very inspiring presentation. My question is, what would be the effect of this convergence on the ALISE education and the curricula? What do you think about it?
Whoa, just a small question there, huh? Just a little question. I think when I went to library school, I had a colleague, Marty Rosen, and he was a very radical person. And he sat around a lot and complained that librarianship had no philosophy. It was a professional course and it had no philosophy. Well, since then, if Marty was standing next to me today, I would be arguing with him that yes, we do have a philosophy. And we have a philosophy that rationalizes free access to information. It has many other aspects to it, but we do have a philosophy. And I think probably what, my humble opinion here, what needs to happen in LIS education is this convergence of philosophies between archives, museums, and libraries. It's a philosophy of this is something that we hold. Some parts of it are not as valuable as other parts. I'm sorry. But this is something that we hold. And we have to understand why this matters. Why does this matter to us? What is our philosophy of maintaining these items and making them available? And somehow we have to pull all three areas together in LIS learning and sort of provide the philosophy, the rationalization for why are we here. Sociologists want to study society. Anthropologists want to study past societies. We want to study information, we want to study how we can make information more available. And the old saw about how information gets turned into knowledge, which, if we're lucky, gets turned into wisdom. We probably know better than that, but I think really all three of those areas have to come together, and LIS schools have to have a greater emphasis on the philosophy of what we're doing. What is our theory? We're getting really good at our methodology. You know, as a discipline, we're getting pretty darn good at the many methodologies that we use. But we still haven't done a really good job of articulating our philosophy for the disciplines. And I think it's an opportunity to pull all three disciplines together when we do teach incoming students at LIS schools or in archival training. We have museum informatics at our school, courses in that. But one of the problems with schools, because it doesn't really get totally ingrained in the curricula, usually it depends on having an individual at the school who is very interested in pushing this forward, and an administration that is willing to let that person push it forward. And when you lose the champion of that idea, then you run into problems continuing the program. And I think this is what frequently happens. I'm sort of concerned at my school right now because our really great museum person has retired. But we have the habit of hiring people back, so it might not be so bad.
Can I have a question? Give a question. You say you want to study information, but probably from a point of view, we want to study how users need information, which probably is not the same. And the question is, do you know some survey done about user needs, and in particular different needs for different cultural heritage institutions?
Okay. There's been, the Pew Institute, Pew Research Institute, tends to do research on particular groups. So we now have research on undergraduates. How do they use information? What do they need for information? What is their information-seeking behavior? And how do they use technology? But we need to probably expand that to others. Yes, no, the user is always at the heart of it. That's why we bother to collect and organize the information. But I have not seen that. We have recently in my library done a LibQual survey, and we're getting the results of that now. But again, that's a very targeted group. That's our faculty, graduate students, undergraduates, and actually our staff as well. So I've never seen anything that pulls all of this together. You'll see it in bits and pieces here and there. It might be a project.
Probably it can be the project we are looking for.
Yeah, it could be.
Christina, the last question.
Thank you. I have a question about the role of IFLA in leading. My question is about the role of IFLA in leading the convergence of standards. You mentioned in your presentation that convergence of standards may be one area in the future where the three areas will join. So what is the role of IFLA in leading that initiative? Could you speak to that?
Okay. We recently confirmed last year we moved standards and guidelines up into one of our key initiatives. So we organized and provided terms of reference for a committee on standards. That committee on standards is working not just for standards for cataloging, describing, etc. It is also working on guidelines for suggestions from the various sections on specific areas. Currently, the most recent one, it's taking us a while to get this through because it's IFLA. But the most recent one was guidelines for individuals with disabilities. That's currently in process. And the concept with IFLA is that if we produce it, somebody will use it. And hopefully somebody will come back and say, look, this is what IFLA is doing. We should be doing this as well. And I see perhaps in the future something evolving regarding the convergence of the standards one would use for describing materials jointly between museums, archives, and libraries, or guidelines on the best practices for users in a digital library or in a physical museum. So I think that IFLA, looking at these things and carefully considering it and trying to make it as accessible to everybody as possible, is the best way we can influence these. And we do have and are open to a wide variety of opinions as these guidelines and standards are developed. So I think it's very important to us. IFLA does not want to say, these are the standards for working between archives, museums, and libraries, and you have to do it this way. We're not interested in that, but what we are interested in is providing some suggestions on how people can work better together. Because just saying, do it this way is way too easy. So, does that help?
Okay, we can close now this session. Thank you very much, Lynn.